Welcome. Today's book for discussion is The Self-Driven Child. Before we get started, please click on the subscribe button below to stay updated and support Daily Book Dive. This is a book about parenting education, and I believe any parent will be attracted to the title of this book. Self-driven growth is about letting children develop their own motivations, so they can complete their homework without constant nagging, advance in university without supervision, and basically grow up strong on their own. If your child truly possesses self-drive, they will definitely become the envy-inducing child of another family. Of course, you might not have children yet, but you can still think of yourself as a parent and reevaluate the education you received. Self-drive is extremely important. We often hear about children who were once envied by others, like those who passed grade 9 piano exams early or consistently achieved good grades and got into prestigious universities. However, once these children reach their goals, they lose the motivation to progress further. Despite passing the piano exams, they may never touch the piano again, and despite their good grades and university acceptance, they may lose their motivation to learn and end up playing games all day. Children with self-drive would not encounter these problems. Once they achieve a goal, like getting into university, they would set new goals for themselves, encourage themselves in face of setbacks, and would not be crushed by challenges. Therefore, compared to specific skills like mastering a foreign language or playing an instrument, self-drive is more of a meta skill that underlies a person's ability to learn and advance. We all know the benefits of self-drive, and parents usually have an idea about how to cultivate it, which involves managing the degree to which they control their children. You can't neglect them, but you also can't be too controlling. Many people have experienced very strict parenting during their childhoods, with many demands placed on them to learn this or that without asking if they even liked these activities. This severely dampened their enthusiasm and left them without self-drive. However, parents also cannot be too lax. They cannot always ask for the child's opinion and decisively avoid anything the child dislikes. This could lead to the child becoming willful and unreasonable, showing no signs of self-drive. The dilemma of being too controlling leads to death, being too lax leads to chaos, has become a common predicament for many parents in fostering self-drive. Why does this problem arise? This book tells us that it largely occurs because these parents have flawed views on education. Only by fundamentally adjusting these views can self-driven growth become a reality. Otherwise, no amount of effort will be effective, and parents will find themselves trapped in the dilemma of being too controlling leads to death, being too lax leads to chaos. The book is authored by two people. One is an American clinical neuropsychologist, and the other is an expert in heuristic education. Thus, the book not only includes a wealth of engaging cases, but also provides scientifically backed advice and methods. They say something very memorable in the book: "You are the child's consultant, not their boss." This statement is key to cultivating self-drive in children. It requires parents to transform from being bosses to consultants, giving children more autonomy. Fortunately, this book does not merely demand parents to meet requirements without offering solutions. Next, I will interpret the author's solutions in 3 parts, discussing the difficulties that may arise when parents grant more autonomy to their children and how to address these challenges to promote self-driven growth. Part 1. Let me ask you a question. When you first heard the name of this book, what were you expecting from its contents? Many parents probably expect this to be a book full of practical advice. Ideally, It would be a manual telling us how long children should study each day, how many extracurricular classes they should take to not get annoyed, and to what extent parents should manage their homework. If we could have such quantified details, then simply following them would enable children to achieve self-driven growth. Actually, just by thinking this way, parents are already making a fundamental mistake. Parents often say, "You can't let your own child lose at the starting line." Whether you agree with this statement or not, it means that you consider the starting point to be very important, that having an early advantage can save 20 years of struggle. Or you might think the starting point is not important, and that life is a marathon where the key is whether you can keep going. As long as you think this way, you are already constrained by this idea. If you view your child's life as a race against others, whether it involves getting good grades, attending a good university, or finding a good job, the ultimate goal is to finish first. If the goal is to finish first, then what parents can do to help their children is very limited. Whether it involves finding a good teacher or attending a good school, the essence is to clear obstacles from the road as much as possible, but in the end, it still depends on the child's own efforts. This form of educational philosophy can be summarized as a challenge effort model. In this model, parents focus on specific goals, such as getting into university. Although they can clear some obstacles, they don't have a solution for the child's effort. This becomes problematic. What parents expect from self-driven growth in this model is that even if the conditions they prepare aren't very good, the child can still rely on their own efforts and persevere to the finish line. The situation of being too controlling leads to death, being too lax leads to chaos, naturally arises under this model. What is being controlled or let go? It's whether the child is making an effort. If the child is not making enough effort, this model does not provide a solution, so parents fall into anxiety and a dilemma. Being too controlling doesn't work, and being too lax doesn't work either. As long as it remains under this model, this problem may be insoluble. The profound insight of this book is to help parents escape from the challenge effort model and switch to another model. What should it switch to? I summarize this model as a stress control model. Once switched to this model, parents' focus is no longer on a specific goal but returns to the child, focusing on the child's stress. The method for the child's growth also no longer relies solely on the child's effort but also depends on the control that parents can provide to the child. At this point, you might first wonder why this model places stress at the core. Actually, it's quite simple. Stress is a more fundamental factor. It's the power behind the child's growth. Suppose a child transfers to a new class where the teachers and classmates are all strangers. This will certainly cause the child great stress. If this child can withstand the stress and is willing to proactively meet new classmates and explore new things, we can say this child has strong self-drive. If a child always stays in their comfort zone, not trying new things or taking on higher challenges, they indeed have no stress. But they also lack the motivation for growth. So, to some extent, stress is the source of power for self-driven growth. However, parents' focus on the stress is not just because stress can provide the power for growth. More importantly, stress has another side. It can also harm the child. The book mentions that the human brain's stress response system affects behavior through two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. These two hormones give stress its dual nature. Adrenaline is a hormone that can unleash potential. Perhaps you've heard of a child being pinned under a car, and in a moment of desperation, the child's parent can muster tremendous strength to lift the car. This is actually the effect of adrenaline. When facing a crisis, the stress response system quickly releases adrenaline, enabling people to tap into potential they can't normally access. This is why, under some stress, children can perform exceptionally well and gain confidence. If stress persists, cortisol will be released. This hormone is originally meant to help the body cope with high-stress environments, but if a child's cortisol levels remain very high for weeks or months, it can affect their memory. This is why, under other types of stress, a child's learning ability might decrease. Actually, if stress factors can be quickly eliminated, the child's cortisol levels can return to normal, and it won't harm the child's growth. Even accidental events that cause stress can leave a deep impression on the child, and the next time they encounter a similar situation, they won't feel as much stress, which means the child has grown through the stress. The U.S. National Scientific Council on the Developing Child also classifies stress into 3 types: positive stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. Positive stress is like feeling both excited and nervous right before performing on stage after long rehearsals. This kind of stress can often allow children to fully unleash their potential and perform better. Tolerable stress generally refers to situations beyond the child's control, such as parents arguing or being bullied at school. Although it's difficult for children to cope with this kind of stress on their own, if there are adults nearby to support and help, this stress can actually make the child stronger. Toxic stress refers to harmful stress, either from encountering a severe traumatic event or from enduring stress for a long time without help and support. This kind of stress can severely affect the child's health, making them sensitive and fragile, and it can even cause irreversible damage to the brain. To use an analogy, a child is like a car speeding along, growing rapidly. Stress is the car's power system. The greater the stress, the more powerful the engine, but it also makes it easier to lose control and crash. If there's a stress gauge, then paying attention to this gauge is essentially focusing on the child's growth drive. For parents, the most important thing in cultivating their child's self-drive is to closely monitor this stress gauge. They should let their children experience more positive stress, provide sufficient support when they encounter tolerable stress, and avoid toxic stress as much as possible. Part 2. Having said this, you might now recognize the importance of stress for a child's growth. But then the question comes again: why can a child's growth rely on the control given by parents after they focus on stress? According to what we've discussed before, in this model, when parents want to help their children, they actually need to help them cope with harmful stresses. What causes these stresses? It's when children encounter problems beyond their control that they can't solve on their own. The book also mentions that the main part of the brain that helps solve stress is the prefrontal cortex, which is related to cognitive functions such as planning and decision-making, and, most importantly, it can control impulses. However, there's an issue: it matures very late. The decision-making and judgment functions of the prefrontal cortex don't fully develop until around 25 years old, and emotional control functions mature even later, generally not until around 32 years old. Therefore, the steering wheel of the child's growth car certainly can't be handed over to the child from the beginning, with parents not caring about anything. Before the child matures, parents need to sit in the co-driver's seat, watching over them, helping them, and even taking over the steering wheel in moments of crisis. So, When parents shift their mindset from focusing on the ultimate goal to focusing on the child's stress. To improve the child's growth, the solution naturally shifts from expecting the child's effort to providing beneficial stress and solving harmful stress. So, how exactly can parents help their children solve harmful stress? The book mentions a key phrase: control is the antidote for stress. There have been psychological experiments where people were put in a very noisy environment, which made them very anxious. But just placing a bell next to them, which the person could ring, even though ringing the bell didn't actually stop the noise, significantly reduced their anxiety level. Also, many people prefer driving to flying, even though flying is a safer mode of transport, because flying doesn't offer the same sense of control as driving, thus generating more stress. Providing a sense of control, if just said like this, might lead many parents to misunderstand. They might think that giving children control means giving them enough freedom to make their own decisions. This seems to be another dilemma of being too controlling leads to death. Being too lax leads to chaos. But actually, it's not like that. Have you noticed that in the goal-effort model, the dilemma of control and release is about the child's effort? But here, what's being controlled and let go is the child's choices. This is precisely the difference that makes the original predicament non-existent. This is no longer a binary choice between being authoritarian or permissive. Parents have these thoughts because when facing specific issues, they set a constraint for themselves, which is that since they need to help the child choose, they must make the best choice. Many parents might disagree at this point, saying they are not perfectionists and have never thought about always having to make the best choice for their child. Is that really the case? Let me give you an example. Suppose your child has just graduated from junior high and faces a choice. He has the opportunity to attend a particularly good high school, but most of his friends are going to another average high school. And he really hopes to go there. Would you give your child the autonomy to give up the particularly good high school? I think most parents would insist on their child going to the better high school and even tell them, "I'm doing this for your own good. You'll thank me later." After all, this is a choice that could affect their entire life. How could you let your child make a casual choice? Although I'm talking about a specific case here, parents might make what they believe to be the best choice for their child for similar reasons when facing other decisions. Actually, when a parent says, "It's up to you," it's not just saying this phrase and being done. Behind this phrase, at least 3 things need to be done by the parent. The first thing is to help them eliminate the things they're not yet ready for or whose consequences they cannot bear, because forcing them to do these things will only increase their stress. For example, there's no need to require a child still in kindergarten whose logical thinking ability is not yet developed to learn coding just because children's coding courses are very popular. The second thing is, in things where children are capable of making their own decisions. Parents should not interfere excessively, thus giving children the opportunity to practice and gradually accumulate experience. The key question then is, what things are children capable of deciding on their own? It's simple. Those decisions that might not be the best in your mind, but aren't too outrageous either. Such matters are within the children's capacity to decide. Giving these matters over to the children to decide, they will feel that they have a sense of control. And the third thing is to let children bear the consequences of their choices, forming a closed loop of choice and outcome. Parents must restrain themselves and not help children handle the consequences that they should bear themselves. Only then can children receive genuine feedback and have personal experience when they encounter similar problems next time. Parents should not worry. If the first thing is done properly, situations where children cannot bear the consequences will not occur. Like the example of choosing schools. Whether choosing a particularly good high school or an average one, you should give the choice to your child and let them bear the consequences of their choice. If you, as a parent, still feel uneasy because, after all, choosing a high school is a big deal, then what you need to do is not to make the decision for them, but to give them the chance to make decisions on other, smaller matters earlier on, letting them bear the consequences of their imperfect decision outcomes. When they have accumulated rich experience in making choices, they will make decisions just as good as yours. Or, even better, when facing such significant decisions. So, giving children a sense of control does not mean giving up any intervention in the child's decisions, but rather, parents need to manage themselves well. When the child makes not-so-good decisions, don't be anxious, but manage your own emotions and support them unconditionally from behind. Here's a reminder. The book also provides many methods to help parents deal with anxiety, which I won't detail here. But if you're interested, you can read the original book. The links are in the description below. Part 3. Having discussed stress and control in the stress control model. Does that mean that as long as parents closely monitor their child's stress and manage control well, the child can grow self-driven? Actually, there's still one step missing to enable a child to grow self-driven, helping the child build their own internal motivation. In the car of a child's growth, parents can't always sit in the co-driver's seat. Eventually, the control of the car must be completely handed over to the child. After the child fully masters the car, whether they still have the will to meet bigger challenges and improve their skills is the key to self-driven growth. Therefore, before leaving the co-driver's seat, parents need to help the child establish internal motivation, allowing the child to willingly set and tackle challenges during their growth. How to do this? The easiest thing to think of might be to reward the child, giving them a sense of achievement in a timely manner. Many games are addictive because they provide immediate feedback. Doing well earns rewards, which gives a great sense of achievement. Thus, players will voluntarily challenge higher difficulty tasks to obtain more rewards. However, this method has its problems. Although it can stimulate the child to overcome challenges through external rewards, it also brings other issues. Such incentives are very short-lived. Once the reward is no longer attractive, or the tasks become too difficult to complete, such incentives disappear. It can even make the child dependent on external rewards, not putting in effort to learn without rewards. Therefore, to establish internal motivation, it is more important to help the child build an internal desire mechanism, letting the child understand that learning itself can satisfy their internal needs. The book mentions the theories of psychologists Deci and Ryan, stating that cultivating a child's internal motivation involves 3 important internal needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The first need, autonomy, involves providing more space for the child to make their own choices when facing challenges. This is actually giving the child a sense of control. This way, the child knows that the things they do are their own choices, and the efforts they put in are driven by their own inner motivations, not for obtaining external rewards or praise. If parents have already done well in letting the child make their own decisions, then meeting the child's need for autonomy will not be a problem. The second need, competence, involves helping the child build confidence to face challenges. This confidence is not actually the ability to do things well, but a feeling that they can handle things well. When parents help the child meet this need, they are not completing tasks for the child to reduce the difficulty of the challenges, but rather helping the child build an understanding of their own abilities. For example, even if your own child's grades are not particularly outstanding, you can still express recognition of their efforts and feel proud of them. The third need, relatedness, is about making the child feel cared for and loved. We might all have had this experience during school, liking a subject not because the content was particularly engaging, but because the teacher cared about us. Because we liked this teacher, we were willing to put more effort into that subject. Similarly, when your child can feel the unconditional love you convey to them, they will tell themselves, "My parents care about me, not about how many points I scored." Introducing these three elements of cultivating a child's internal motivation might still seem abstract to you, so I can give you an example from the book to help you understand. Suppose your child did poorly on a final exam and the score was very bad. How should you encourage them? You could say, "I know you're not happy with this score, and I know you put in a lot of effort. If you're willing, I'd love to talk with you about it so I can help you in the next exam." This kind of feedback first shows empathy, meeting the need for relatedness. It also tells them that there is room and means for improvement, meeting their need for competence. And the ending, saying, "If you're willing, we can," makes the child feel in control, meeting their internal need. In summary, when a child feels frustrated, helpless, or loses interest in something, it's also a time for you to help them build internal motivation. At that time, you should respond like the dialogue above, not just focusing on one aspect of their needs, but simultaneously taking care of their needs for competence, internal needs, and autonomy. I believe that this way, you can help your child build their own internal drive and ultimately achieve self-driven growth. In conclusion, having discussed the core content of this book, let me summarize for you. When you want to cultivate your child's self-drive, you first need to examine your own educational model. If you are still focusing on a specific goal, expecting the child to strive to achieve it on their own, then you will fall into the dilemma of being too controlling leads to death, being too lax leads to chaos. At that point, the first thing you need to do is switch your educational model to the stress control model, shifting your attention from specific goals to the child's stress. Then, when the child faces choices, help them eliminate options they're not yet prepared for. Also, you need to manage your anxiety when they make a not-so-great choice, letting them bear the consequences of their choice. Finally, if the child encounters any difficulties, don't motivate them with external rewards, but tell them, "I believe in you," while also providing ways to improve and plenty of choice space. The original book link is attached at the end for further reading. You can also click the share button below the video to share this book with your friends. Congratulations, you've just finished another book.